E te iwi tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou I roto I tēnei pō. Kia ora everybody. Jay Wilson here from Te Pai Pai Waho, connecting to you tonight through a range of platforms. And still we carry on with the same kaupapa, well, a similar kaupapa from last week, where I talked about last week, filling your cup and what food is your awairua food. And tonight I want to talk about hope. But before we do that, I'll open us up and then we'll get into things. Mai maranga wakarangona te rangi e tūnei, mai maranga wakarangona te papa e takoto ake nei. Mai are wakatupua anuku, mai are wakatupua arangi, e ue ana ki te pau o te pai pai waho e tūnei. E kei oma I te manawa ora. Manawa ora ki tipua, manawa ora ki tapito. Manawa ora ka putu ki wao ki te whai au, ki te ao marama. Turuturu au iti waka maua ki a tīna hui e taekie. Taekie ki a tātou. E mihi ana ki a tātou I tēnei pō, ki a Ranti Wai. I think I saw you yesterday in town, if you were in town. Wai anō. Kia ora everybody. As I said earlier, it's Jay Wilson here from Te Pai Pai Waho, connecting to you through a range of platforms. And tonight, as a continuation from last week's talk about what fills your cup, what kai is your awairua kai, tonight I want to talk about hope. But before I do that, just brief overview of a few things first. Nā reire me I kaua atu ana ki koutou ki tātou katoa. E tangi atu ana ki o tātou mate, Auntie Sylvia, ko koe tēnā ki Melbourne. Sandra, ko koe tērā ki te Waipounamu. Uncle Peter, ki Taupō. Tatu atu ki a koe, Auntie Ree, ki te takutai o tō tāua awa. E moi koutou. Aere koutou ki te iwi nui. Koutou te wānau pani e tangi atu ana, e mii atu ana ko koutou, ko tātou I te wā iti nei. O ki tonu mai ki a tātou katoa te kaupapa tangata, e kimi nei, e rapu nei, I te ora I te ka I te māramatanga, kia paupau ai ki roto I te ngākau o tēnā o tātou, tēnā koutou, kia ora katoa tātou. So as I said, I'm going to talk about hope tonight. And the context of this comes from getting feedback about the manu kōrero. And I first want to acknowledge everybody in the manu kōrero and the amazing effort it takes to get people prepared for their speeches at school level, at regional level, and then at national level. And I know helping my son, I had a great time helping my son as I had amazing memories of manu kōrero. And his comments cracked me up, including him correcting my Māori, and he was right. So that was beautiful. But just getting some feedback from the Nationals last week, and they were awesome. But that some of the kaupapa were really heavy and or the articulation of the kaupapa were quite heavy. And so I thought, well, I want to talk about hope and what hope means from a Tūpuna perspective. And I'm mindful that, we've had 100 and or over 200 years of Western influence. So what is a Tūpuna perspective? But I'm going to give something anyway, because often, kia ora Luke, when you hear the word hope, you jump straight to tūmanako, which is a traditional Māori word, but has today got a lot of Christian connotations. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I did something that I don't normally do for these kōrero, and I had a look in the dictionary. And what I liked is when I put in hope, and it may have read it as hope, I don't know. But it came up with the word manawa ora as the first word for hope. I went, manawa ora, manawa nui, that's cool. And manawa ora is the breath of life, but it also is, kia kaha, kia maia, kia manawa nui. So in this context, manawa ora and manawa nui are very similar because it's about being steadfast. It's about enduring through the ups and downs. And a Māori context of hope, as I know it, is that optimistic state of mind. And I often shorten it to, a glass is always half full rather than half empty. And I say that knowing what it's like being raised where manawa ora, aroha, manawa ora, not mana ora. And I say that raised in a whānau, raised in a whānau where we did know what empty cupboards were like. And, I'm mindful that too many of our whānau today, all around the country, are struggling with empty cupboards. But I wanted to talk about hope because when I look into our Tūpuna teachings say things like tama tū, tama oro, tama ora, tama noho, tama mate. And so straight away, that's saying you have to have a certain mindset to understand that meaning. And as you understand that meaning, yes, tama noho means to be inactive and you don't get anything from being inactive. And tama tū means to be active, but it actually means about kia tū a hinengaro, not just a tinana, but that your hinengaro is also upright. And that requires you to look for and search for things that you believe and see that are good for you. And okay, we all have different measures of what good is. And some people's good might be my good. Some people's good might be my bad. But we've got to look for those measures for ourselves. And tama tū, tama ora is a teaching which encourages us to not just stand and be active, but for our mind to be active. Because idle minds get us into trouble. Idle minds cause heaps of arguments amongst friends and cousins. But an active mind takes us to a place of ora. Ora ki te whakatipua, ora ki te whakatawito, ora ki arangi nui e tūnei. So ora, or to thrive, where that thriving grows and where that thriving then becomes your legacy for others as you thrive within the universe that has been created by Rangi Nui. So that's one point. Another example of it is the phrase that was always said as I was growing up, pai ake te kore I te kore kore, pai ake te kore kore I te korera wātu. So what that's talking about is better to have nothing than absolutely nothing. Better to have absolutely nothing than completely nothing. And that might not make sense, but in a Māori context, it makes heaps of sense. Because what it's saying is there is no such thing as nothing. And yet, I know people can say, you're right, you're in a warm house tonight. And I get that. But the mindset of our tūpuna, who had lost so much, they still taught these things, even when they had come from a world where everything had been taken off them. And it was their principles, their values, their cultural identity, and the teaching handed down from the tūpuna that gave them the chance to survive. And we're a bit like a pūnitanite or a bit of pūha, or tohetaka. a dandelion, we just pop up. We kore mate. And I think that comes from that mind, that state of mind where we must carry on. Because pai ake te kore is such a cool phrase. And it's hard to remind people when people's measures are all physical. And the amount of times you go to somewhere, or even in your own home, somebody turns up. No such thing as an invitation. People just turn up, and you make with what's there. You make do with what's there, because then it becomes sweeter, and it becomes just so yum, because you're tasting the aroha as that person is trying to create something with care, with intention, no matter how small it may be. And that state of being, that state of mind, is a teaching tukuiho, which is why when I looked in the dictionary, I freaked out and loved that the first term that came up for hope was manawa ora, which took me to manawa nui. And all of the prophetic movements all refer to manawa ora and manawa nui in some way or form. Might not be those words specifically, but that same intention of, just keep going. Just keep going. Kia manawa nui tātou, keep going, because there will be a silver lining. So just wanted to share that, because I think as people were talking about their experience with lockdown in the Manu Kōrero, and my son, his speech was about COVID last year, but it talked about the beauty of the Māori response and the tangihanga muscle. What's the tangihanga muscle? You create a tangi. You get to a tangi and you just create something out of nothing. And that's what we do, and we're amazing at it. How many other cultures can project manage an event that might have 100, 500, 2,000 or 10,000 people turn up to over 3 or 4 days, no budget, no planning, and we run it perfectly. And then we run it with COVID restrictions as well. That's called the tangihanga muscle. And the thing with the muscle is it's innate within us, and it teaches us some key things about responsibility of care. And so that responsibility of care takes us to a place where manawa nui and manawa ora is essential. Some of the other words that came up in the dictionary, it feels funny me referring to a dictionary, because I don't. Other than tūmanako were wawata and ingo, whakaingona, which are more around desires. But I really appreciated just how randomly the first word was manawa ora, which takes me to manawa nui and the prophetic teachings. The last point I want to link into is the tai te kawa, the ceremonies related to opening a marae, opening a whare. And one of the key words we use in the tai te kawa, when you imprint kawa or order, universal order, into the house, into the marae, one of the words we use, Whanganui, Taranaki area, is the kawa ora. E kei o mai te kawa ora. And when I think about kawa ora is a concept where you are imbuing order, O-R-D-E-R, of prosperity of life, so that people then thrive while they are there, and then take that feeling away with them. And this whole idea of imbuing kawa ora is amazing, because it gives people more hope, more reason, and more examples to see hope in action. So, koera te kōrero mo tēnei pō, ana, kawa ora. kaua one word, O-R-A, ora, the next word. And I thought I'd just share a little bit about tūmanako, about hope, because when we have hope, it takes us to a beautiful place, even when things are hard. My final point is what our tūpuna did, and I had this conversation today in a Zoom, is they created these concepts called atua so that you can see and touch them, which then makes hope easier to realize. And so the more you can see something, the more you can touch something, the more you can smell something, the more it then grows in your puku and takes you to an amazing place where we can be positive even when the challenges are bloody hard. So ka tia ke te iwi. Kōrero poto tēnei, just as I want to share a bit more, mindful of the amazing work that our tamariki do at Manu Kōrero, as they stand up in front of everybody. And to finish off on a funny point, my boy comes back and he wanted me to help him with his Manu Kōrero. He goes, do you even know what Manu Kōrero was, Dad? And those of you that know my college life, you'll be cracking up right now. Ka te ake, tēnei ka mihi atu, ka hokaere ake nei kupu, ki te tā uu nui, orangi nui e tūnei, turuturu o witi wakamau ake a tīna, hui e, tāiki e kia ora tātou, e koe areta, tēnā koe, kia ora tātou.